Having a new grandbaby join the family is the perfect excuse to make a quilt as a gift. Now, I like to make baby quilts for all of our new grandkids so they can have something special that Gigi made for them. Now, we are expecting a new grandbaby very soon, and I have a confession to make. The baby is due in March, and it's the end of January, and I haven't started. Now, I'm gonna bring you along and show you how I plan a new baby quilt. So let's check it out. Hey friends, it's Barbara Sue at Kowalski Mountain. Welcome back to our channel. So when I am making baby quilts, or any quilt for that matter, my favorite go-to is the Around the Block books. Now, I like traditional block quilting, and I use a bunch of different techniques as well. I do a little bit of applique, just depending on what it is I'm looking for. But traditional blocks are my favorite. Now, the Around the Block books are excellent because these are all rotary cut patterns. Now, if you've been around quilting, some of the old patterns you had to cut out with scissors, and it takes a long time and it's kind of cumbersome. But the Around the Block books give you the instructions of how to cut these quilt blocks with the rotary cutter, and it saves so much time. Now, Philip and I are living in the RV, and our stuff is in storage. And I told Philip a few months ago, I said, we have to find my quilting book. It's in storage, and I can't make a baby quilt without it. Well, our storage unit is packed floor to ceiling, and I decided to buy a new book. All of the other quilts I've made were made out of the first version of the Around the Block, and I'm going to give you an image of that right here so you can see what it looks like. But I went ahead and I bought another version of the Around the Block, and this is called Once More Around the Block, and this is by Judy Hopkins. I love these books. So I did buy a new book, but I bought a different book. So now I have additional patterns that I can use in my quilts. Now, the first thing I need to do is I need to select a block. So come along while I do that. So let's pick out a pattern. Now, I've got my paper so I can write down some notes. I'm going to pick out the ones I like, and then we're going to figure out which one we're going to use. Now, this has a gallery of blocks where it gives me a color rendition of what the block is going to look like. Now, this is a really hard process for me because I don't visualize things. I'm very literal, and so it's really difficult for me to be able to envision what the quilt will look like. So this planning process is a very long process for me. So let's go ahead and kind of look at what we've got. Now, some of these patterns are really busy, and when I'm making a baby quilt, I'm only going to make a block that's about 6 to 7 inches in size. So that's a pretty small block, which means it's going to have some pretty small pieces. So when you get into a really busy pattern like this, the pieces are way too small. So let me just give you an idea. So that pattern, the Acrobats, this triangular pieces, you're going to cut a 2 1/4 inch square, and then you're going to cut that into fourths. Those are very tiny pieces to work with. So the pattern that busy is definitely off the list. We won't be considering that. Now, this one's kind of nice. It's simple. I'm not sure about this center piece. That's a large piece in the center. Let's check out what it says. So this pattern right here, that big center square, it is not too bad actually. It's only 2 1/2 inches in size in that center. So that's not too bad. Remember, we're going to have a seam allowance around that. It's going to take a 1/4 inch all around. So that block's not really too big. Let's put that one on the list. So that one's called Album 2. And it's on page 31. That way I can remember where the pattern is. I like this Alpine cross. It's a little busy. Let's see how big those pieces are. Alpine cross. Yeah, that one's a little bit too busy. That one, you're going to cut a 1 7/8 inch square, which is kind of fussy for cutting anyway. And you're going to cut that in half. So that's going to be pretty small. I'm going to not consider that. Now, if I was making a quilt with a larger square, this would definitely be one on my list. I like that one. Arctic Nights. I like this one. I also like the names of quilt squares. I gave a quilt to someone that was very special to me who had a miscarriage, and it was called Stairway to Heaven. And that was the quilt that I gave her for a gift to remember her baby that she lost. So the name of a quilt block is also something to consider when you're picking one out. I like that Arctic Nights. The one thing I don't like about that is that's two-toned. So this quilt won't have a lot of color variation in it. Now I can help that by putting in more than 2 colors. I could do 4 colors, so I would have some coordinating colors to go together. So it's still not off the list. Let's look at that one. So Arctic Nights, 6-inch block. The smallest piece is 1 1/4 inches square. It's kind of small. Let's put it on the list. We'll consider this one. I really like this Cry of the Loon pattern. I like that it has 3 colors. That's going to give the quilt a little bit more definition. It's a simple pattern. Let's look at the size of the pieces. Okay. Cry of the Loon, 6-inch piece. The smallest pieces are 2 7/8. That's very doable. Easy pieces to work with. I kind of like the name Cry of the Loon. You know, we hunt in this family, and so a loon, there's some significance to loons. I can't think of what it is right now, but there is. It does give us some variations. This one's at the top of the list. Let's put this one on the list, Cry of the Loon. It's on page 56. And I'm going to put a star beside that one because that one's my favorite one so far. Flyfoot. I like that pattern. That's simple. It will look interesting in a full-size quilt with this pattern going on here. It only has 2 colors in it, which that's kind of a downside. Let's see what it says about the pieces. Good size. The pieces are in the 2 to 4 inch size, which that's very doable to work with. And as a suggestion, use a different combination of colors. So that's how we can give a 2-tone quilt some uniqueness, bring some color to the baby quilt. I'm going to put this one down. It's a contender. Foggy Mountain Breakdown. I like the name of that one. It's too small, but I like it. Now, pinwheels are my favorite quilt pattern. They are. And when I made my girls' quilts, they have a lot of pinwheels in them. For a boy, I don't think I'm going to do pinwheels as much as I like them. Rolling 9 patch. Now, sometimes I set a quilt block on point, which means it's a diamond rather than a square. And so when I'm looking, I want to look to see what does the quilt look like set on point, because some of them lose their character when you turn them. So that's a consideration. Ribbon quilt is kind of jumping out at me. Let's look at that one. Good size pieces. They're all in the 2 to 3 inch range. I like that one. I'm going to write that one down. Ribbon quilt. That's on page 105. I'm going to put a star beside that one. I think that's one of my favorite ones so far. Rolling 9 patch. I think that's got a little bit of small pieces. Let's see. Yeah, rolling 9 patch has pieces under 2 inches in size. I really think I'm not going to consider anything that small. It's just hard to work with. So that's a no. Definitely a no. I like that pattern on a bigger quilt, but not on this baby quilt. Okay, so I'm to the end, and I have picked out about 7 blocks that I like. So now is where we're going to figure out which block we're going to do, and then we can buy the fabric. So Cry of the Loon was my favorite one. I like that one. And then I marked Ribbon Quilt as another favorite. Let's look at that one. Here they are side by side. So Cry of the Loon is here. Ribbon Quilt is here. I kind of think I like this one. I like it kind of has a star in it. How does it look on point? Don't think I like it on point. I think I like it in its regular. So far, Ribbon Quilt is my favorite. Now I want to go back and look at the other ones that I picked out just to give them another look. So we've got album 2. I think I'm going to eliminate that one. That one's kind of simple. Arctic Nights. That one's pretty busy. Let's look at the pattern again. That's got a lot of cutting, some small pieces, and I've waited to the last minute. So I'm going to eliminate that one. So Arctic Nights is off. Fly Foot. I don't know. I kind of like Fly Foot. It's not jumping out at me. I'm not gonna take it off the list yet. So let's look at Old Gray Goose. I do like that one. 1, 2, 3. It's got 4 colors in it. Old Gray Goose has a light, 2 mediums, and a dark. I like using quilts that have that variety. I'm gonna keep that one on here. Practical Orchard. Did I tell you this is the hardest part? Actually picking the fabric is for me. Practical Orchard, I'm going to take it off. I've taken that one out for sure. Okay, so now I'm down to just 4. Now, if I had a copy machine, my printer died. If I had one, I would print these out and I would kind of put them all side by side so I could really get a good feel for that, but my printer died, so I don't have that as an option. So let's look at them again. Cry of the Loon. Cry of the Loon. Let's talk about what I like about them. I like the star. I like that it has 3 colors. The pieces are good size. I am going to have some really little pieces. Cutting these, those are going to be small. So Cry of the Loon is going to have some small. I'm just going to put some small pieces here. I'm going to put 3 colors. That might be coming down my importance or favorites, but so far it's on the list. Now Flyfoot. Flyfoot here. I'm going to eliminate that one. Too simple. Old Gray Goose. Okay. Old Gray Goose uses 4 colors, so I'm going to write that down. 4 colors. The pieces aren't too small. That one I think is better in that aspect. I'm going to put okay pieces. That one's still on the list. Now let's look at Ribbon Quilt. This is so hard. Ribbon Quilt. So Ribbon Quilt. Ribbon Quilt only uses 3 colors. It has no dark colors, which is not too bad for a baby quilt. Now I can substitute one of those mediums. Let me look to see where they are though. The light is the center. So this is your light. Oh, they're the exact same. Okay, so these, you could do a dark in there. Like you could do a dark and a light. You could make that. Pieces are good size. Good size. 3 colors. I think Cry of the Loon just came off the list because it has the smallest pieces. I think I'm going to take Old Gray Goose off. So I am to my 2 that I starred. Funny how that works. So Cry of the Loon and Ribbon Quilt. Really, Cry of the Loon I think is my favorite. It does have the smallest pieces. I was going to say, these both have a lot of points, so that doesn't matter. That actually has 4 colors. 2 lights, a medium, and a dark. This has 3 colors. Easy to work with pieces. I think I'm going to do ribbon quilt. I do really like Cry of the Loon. The pieces are going to be quite a bit smaller. Cutting a 3-inch block down to 4 pieces is going to be really tiny pieces to work with. So I think this is going to be the one. We're going to do ribbon quilt. Now I had to be a little bit sneaky because I didn't really tell Jess I was going to make her a baby quilt. I kind of want it to be a surprise. So I had to kind of be sneaky and just say, well, what are the colors that you're considering for their baby nursery? And the baby's not going to have its own room, so it's not going to have a nursery by chance. So that makes it a little bit harder. But the colors that she gave me were navy, sage, orange, and brown. And for this quilt, I need a light and 2 mediums. So I could get away with doing a dark and a medium. So I could do the navy and maybe the sage and maybe a beige. I don't know how to work the orange in. I'll have to look at it. I might mix up some colors. We'll see. You thought this took a long time? Picking out fabrics is the hardest. But once I do pick them out, it'll be great. It just is a really hard process to me. So that's what I'm working on. Navy, sage, orange, and brown with lights and 2 mediums. And I might go with like 2, like I might do, I don't know. I'll have to see what I can find for fabric. So we'll see. We'll see. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to do the ribbon quilt for our new grandbaby that Jess and Eric are going to be having very soon. And I've got to get this finished before he's born. But here it is. Now I've got to do some calculations and figure out how much fabric I need to buy. Okay, so now we need to figure out how much fabric we need to make the quilt. Now I've decided to do a quilt 4 blocks across the top, 5 down the side. So we're going to need a total of 20 blocks. My initial thoughts are I'm going to combine the orange and the brown into 1 block and the sage and the navy into another block. That's my initial thoughts. That could change. So then that means I need 10 blocks of each combination. So still a total of 20 blocks. I'm going to be doing kind of a medallion type quilt. So in the center, I'm going to do an applique, and I haven't decided what it's going to be yet. It's going to be a little bit bigger. I have never done a medallion so big in the center, so I'm going to have to, oh, that changes. I don't need as many blocks. I need to look. I'm looking at the baby quilts I've made for my other grandchildren to help me with my planning. So let me draw it out. We're going to draw this. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to do, okay, I'm kind of making, let me do this in marker. So this is going to be my plan. Remember, this is just a rough drawing. I've got my 4, and then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's our quilt right there, 4 by 5. Now I want to kind of do a medallion in it. I could do like this center here and do an applique. It's a really big applique. I've also thought of just doing it down here someplace. If I made my quilt, if my quilt went this way, this is going to be like 14 inches. That's a foot square of a block. I'm going to get creative on that one. I think what I'll do, I have a plan for that. I think I know what I'm going to do. Okay, so this is how we're going to lay out the quilt. I've finally come up with a plan. So let me make my rectangular quilt. And it's going to have 4 blocks, 4 rows of blocks, and then 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to pretend that they're all even, okay? Then I'm going to take this section right here. My other option is here. I might do it here. I'm going to do it here in the middle. I'm going to do the middle. I'm going to do the medallion right here in the middle. I'm going to do some fancy edge here. And then I'm going to do my applique here of whatever that's going to be. I have some thoughts about that, but I haven't decided yet. And then the baby's name will be here. So that's going to be the plan. So what all that says is that I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 blocks. 16 blocks. These are going to be the 7.5-inch blocks. It's coming together. It's a slow process for me because I don't visualize stuff and I have to kind of keep playing with it until I can come up with a plan. But I feel pretty good about this. I like the medallion here. Making it a little bit smaller by adding a border here really helped me come to terms with the size of that block, because that's a big block in the center of the quilt. But that helps me work with it a little bit better. Then my little applique, which will be something cutesy. I like to use coloring book patterns for my applique because they're bigger, they're easier, they're simpler to work with. And then the baby's name will be appliqued right there. So we've got a plan. Now let me figure out how much fabric I need. Okay. Now you can see this is actually, like I said, this is the hardest part other than picking the fabric. You thought this was hard? Wait till we pick the fabric. I'm going to try to take you along. I'm going to be honest. It's kind of weird to film in public, but hopefully when I go to the store, it won't be busy and it'll be okay. So that's my plan. So thanks for coming along and letting me figure that out. I can't wait. I'm so glad I finally have a plan for the baby quilt. Now I can get this and hopefully I can pull it off before this baby is born. Okay, well I'm here at Joann Fabrics and I'm ready to pick out my fabric. Now this is a really hard thing for me to do and I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty uncomfortable filming in the store, so I'll do my best. Let's go see if we can find some fabric for this baby quilt. If Jess was having a girl, I would definitely get this because I love this. We need a light, 2 mediums. This is kind of interesting. Looks like tree bark. There's not very much. I like this. Not very much of this. Well, I've got a cart full of fabrics. I'm liking these combs. Leaning towards was doing a green quilt rather than trying to do the other colors. Not finding every color I would use. These are my 3 favorites. I just can't vision it. Kind of liking this. This is a little darker than this, but I like the similar pattern. I have a light in the green. I can't find a light in the blue. This is a possibility. I just found this. These coordinate. These coordinate. Maybe we're getting closer. Okay, I think I have a plan. This is my block right here. So my plan is to have green blocks and blue blocks. And this is the center star of the blue blocks. The 2 mediums. This is the center star of the green blocks. And the 2 mediums. And then to use the hunter and the navy for accent color. Okay, I think I have it figured out. So I've been here about 2.5 hours. I'm gonna do a mixture of blue squares and green squares. There'll be a medallion in the middle with some type of applique. And I think I have my fabric figured out. So here we go. I did it! Here's my fabric. Oh, it took me probably 2.5 hours. I'm terrible at picking fabric, but I think I like it, and now it's just to get it done. The planning is all done, which for me is a very hard part, so let's get it finished. Thank you so much, friends, for coming along while I plan this baby quilt for Jess and Eric, and I can't wait to show you the finished product. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, friend, hit that button. Help us make our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Thanks for watching.